Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited for this inside look with the Miami Dolphins. Before we get started, I wanted to introduce ourselves. My name is Kristen Twyford, and I'm the Content Marketing Director for Libris. And here at Libris, we empower effortless visual storytelling, both through our digital asset management tools and through webinars like this one. We think this one is going to be fantastic, and we are super excited about our upcoming PhotoShelter Summit for Brands. If you love our webinars, you are not going to want to miss this. It's coming up on June 25th. We already have some great speakers that we've announced from the Washington Post, the Players Tribune, NASCAR, and content marketing expert Joe Polizzi. And you might just see some familiar faces I don't want to spoil our upcoming speaker announcements, but you might see somebody from the Miami Dolphins there as well. So you're going to want to sign up for that. Here is the link to sign up. It's coming up on June 25th, so don't miss it. So today we are so excited to have Hiro Ueno and Pete McMahon joining us from the Miami Dolphins. They have prepared an incredible conversation about how they manage all of their visual content, their overall visual storytelling strategy, and how they've really overcome challenges to streamline their workflow and make visual content access really easy for everybody on the team so that they can really respond in the moment and tell their story. So guys, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. This is going to be an amazing conversation.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Great. We're going to hand it over to them now to
Sure.
take it away.
Can you see my screen here?
Yep. Good to go.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, we are the Miami Dolphins. We're represented as the Miami Dolphins. And here is our lovely faces. My name is Hiro. I've been with the Dolphins for just about over a year now. I spent 3 seasons in LA with the Rams when they first moved there in 2016, and then about a season with the NFL as well, working at the photo desk under Ben Liebenberg and Alex Kane over that team over there. Pete?
And yeah, my name is Peter McMahon. I'm the manager of photography with the Miami Dolphins here. I just completed my 10th season covering the team.
Yeah. And we're going to just start off by talking about our photo style and our photography style, and then Pete kind of lead the discussion there on that one.
Yeah, so we've kind of shifted.
Everything went so smoothly beforehand. I'll kind of just continue while we get Pete reconnected here. So basically the initial idea was, cover, don't miss anything on action, don't miss anything of the game that's going on. And then over the years, as we've kind of gone to different brand directions and as we've gone through different leadership changes, we stressed a lot more on the storytelling between the games. So it's not just, the high points of action like this. This is incredible stuff. This is Pete's work right here. Sorry, I'm just texting Pete to get back on right now. But this is incredible stuff. This is what you think of when you think of sports photography, and this is what you think of as NFL photography. And it's sexy and it's fun and it's great. But a lot of this stuff is really a side process of what we do. We went from coverage to storytelling. And what does that mean? That really just means focusing a lot more on the items between the whistle, pre-game, locker room, post-game, in between quarters. And this is kind of what you get when you focus a lot more specifically on, the players and the interaction you have with the players. Pete, you back?
I think so.
There we go. All right, we're back.
Sorry,
Pete, I was just talking about our shift from coverage to storytelling and what that transition kind of looked like over the years.
Yeah, early on, I think photography has just developed in general, but we've tried to focus more on storytelling. It's not just about, like Hiro said, the plays. It's about the fans. It's about the reactions coming from the bench. It's a little bit of everything, and we're fortunate. We have anywhere from 8 to 14 photographers on a game day, and because of our trust with them, we're able to take chances. For example, this image of Devontae Parker catching a touchdown pass. I took this with an 85 millimeter f1.8 f2. Which normally I may not shoot at such a shallow depth of field, but knowing that I have where we station photographers, I have a photographer in every corner of the field, and then I have roamers that are going up and down with the line of scrimmage. They allow me to take advantage and try out new things. This may not be a very difficult technique. It's just shooting very shallow, but I'm able to rely on them to help tell those stories of the game. If our quarterback is walking out to the field and he's going to go warm up on the field, I can trust that they're going to get the shots, and I'm able to stay in the locker room and get some of those pre-game interactions with the coaches, or getting taped up, stretching in the locker room, listening to music and things like that. And we've tried to really build up those relationships with the players and coaches so that we can get more out of them. This image right here, for instance, of Sam, if you don't know the player or coach or whoever it is, your subject, they may not growl at you like Sam did right here. They may just kind of look down or look to the side and things like that. But building that trust and just getting to know them and learning their little mannerisms and things like that helps you cover them each and every day. And along with just trying to find new angles and things like that, we're constantly looking at other photography around the NFL as well as in other sports and industries to try and apply that to our photography.
Yeah, and I know we're wearing our bright aqua polos, and we are headliners as the Miami Dolphins, but we do a lot more than that. If any of you work from a stadium perspective, you kind of know that there really is no off season. Even those that work for teams realize there's no real off season. For us, we do a lot more than just the Dolphins. Every single bullet or icon here kind of represents a series, a yearly series, or a single event that's a big one. And Pete can talk a little bit more about how we kind of manage that and juggle that throughout the year.
Yeah, and I like that you put the off season in quotations because they're there for a reason. There is no off season. To take a step back, we played the New England Patriots on December 29th in Foxborough, which we won, by the way. And we flew back to Florida that night, and the very next day we hosted the Orange Bowl at Hard Rock Stadium. And a month later, we're hosting Super Bowl LIV. And I think I had spoken to some of our grounds crew that night after the game, which was I think a 24-hour day. They were going to be ripping up the field 6 a.m. the next day just so that they could prepare for construction for Miami Open. Miami Open is a 2-week-long tennis tournament that we host here at the stadium. It's essentially 14 game days straight for us, including an entire media day that we do with as many of the athletes as possible. You're talking about, Roger Federer. I think it was Roger Federer and Eisner that competed in the final match this year. But you have all these different events that surround the tournament. We also have the largest team-run fundraising event in the NFL, the Dolphins Cancer Challenge. And then along with multiple concerts throughout the year, we mentioned the Rolling Stones down there. We held that last year. We have Rolling Loud, which is a 3-day music festival that's one of the largest hip-hop festivals in the world. Along with other soccer matches, we had Brazil and Colombia last year. In 2017, we hosted the El Clasico matchup between Real Madrid and Barcelona. And in 2021, next year, we'll be hosting the College Football National Championship. So we do a lot more than just Miami Dolphins football.
Yep. And if you look at the stadium itself, I didn't realize how much went into this when I took the job, actually, and didn't realize that there was so much surrounding not just the team, but the stadium itself and the responsibilities that we have to cover and shoot and catalog all this imagery as well. I mean, this is the Miami Open main grandstand or main stage here in the middle of the stadium itself, and that's the Hard Rock logo up there. But to show you this, I mean, this is a big, big event with some of the biggest stars that tennis has to offer, from Naomi Osaka to Roger Federer to Serena Williams. We cover everything during that 2-week period, along with the weeks leading up to it, with its own media day and massive responsibilities and image workflows. And then on top of that, the Super Bowl is really the best that football can be from a presentation and event standpoint. And yeah, the game day itself is the big one that we are all talk about and we are all excited about. And Pete was there for just about 24 hours from 4 a.m. to 4 a.m. that day. But along with that, we have weeks, if not a month, of responsibility leading up to the event itself, with community engagement pieces, with even just things of grabbing setups, shots around the stadium itself, future Super Bowls or future events. It's a lot more than just the game day itself. And from a stadium perspective, it is a little different. And then along with that, this is the same stadium. This is the same campus grounds. You can see Hard Rock in the background to the left over there. This is Rolling Loud. This is not just a single concert with one single headliner. This is sprawling. I mean, you can see the crowd envelops pretty much the entire campus with its own Ferris wheel over there in the back, right? But it's not just, one concert. It's a 3-day event that's hosted every year, and it's a massive, massive undertaking on our staff, our stadium, and then especially our photography as well. And then Pete, if you want to talk about, since he's been here for 10 years, I've only really been here for about a year. Pete, you want to talk a little bit about what we were before Libris and the system we put in place?
Yeah. So to give you a little backstory, I'm originally from Rome, New York, but I grew up in Sebring, Florida, moved down to South Florida in 2009 to study photography at the Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale, and actually began working as a private contractor in the fall of 2010 covering the Dolphins. I had reached out to Dennis Bancroft, who was one of the Dolphins team photographers at the time. My timing couldn't have been better. Dennis and the other team photographer, Kelly Gavin, who is now the Texas Rangers team photographer, they just needed someone to help in the office, calling events, calling games, organizing files, answering emails, things like that. But at that point in time, our archive consisted of numerous desktop hard drives, portable hard drives, thumb drives. I mean, a little bit of everything. So if I was asked to pull 15, 20 images of a specific player, I would either go through game days one by one and try and find single images of that guy, or maybe I'm on ESPN.com looking up game log stats, trying to figure out where he had, this many catches so I could maybe get a grab of a touchdown or something. But you end up wasting a lot of time trying to locate just a few images, and it was incredibly inefficient. But that's what it was. Fast forward to 2013, 2014, Tom Garfinkel, who is our president and CEO, came to the organization, and immediately there was a much greater need for photography. John Willie, who was the team photographer of the Arizona Diamondbacks, was brought on, and John really helped me and take my photography and just push it to another level. We ran into the same issues, though. John and I, along with others, try to find new programs and systems to try and help us with the massive archive that we were responsible for, but nothing ever really made a big enough impact. I was still pulling images from our archive literally based off of my memory of the games. And as I mentioned before, we have a large pool of freelance photographers. As my responsibilities grew, everyone started sending me their takes of the game days. So on a normal game day, having around 8 to 10 photographers help cover all the assignments that the organization requests. They're all submitting images to me. I'm getting 8 to 10 different types of links and folders, and it was rough. It would bog down my computer. I'd have a number of different file sharing accounts and whatnot. So it was a bit of a mess. Trying to put all these together, make it nice and neat, was incredibly difficult. And then, to be able to provide all these images to the employees in a timely fashion was just really rough. It was very difficult. Adding to that, we only had access to our server at the stadium, so nothing was remote, and a lot of things were getting duplicated across different platforms and whatnot. So it made it very, very tough.
Yeah, and to go off that, I was brought on about a year ago as digital asset manager to pretty much kind of streamline a lot of workflows from video to photo and creative and marketing. And one of the first things that we really tackled was PhotoDam and asset management around that, along with just the workflow of getting images from the field to the press box. That's a whole another conversation. But in terms of what we did and the timeline that we did it on, I started at the organization around April, and we had the system up around, I believe, June, July. May, June-ish was around the turnaround time. So about 30 to 60 days after I started, we had the system in place. Nice thing is we had ownership backing of there was a glaring need for the system, and everyone kind of knew that. And the goal here was to create a self-service station. As Pete mentioned, we have two in-house photographers, and Pete himself, and then Carlos Goldman, who's another talented photographer on our staff. And while they try to be as available as they can't be there all the time. They can't be there at 2 a.m. on a Thursday when you have a certain request for a certain image that you need for an 8 a.m. meeting. So they're just, it's just not possible. So the idea was to create a self-service station, and that's why we built in certain aspects like SSO, which is single sign-on, which means that anyone with a Dolphins or Hard Rock email address has base level access to our library. Even if they've never signed up before, all they have to do is go to our URL, log in with their regular email password, and they're in. And they have access to our entire library, or what we give them access to. Certain departments do have higher levels of access. So creative and marketing, football communications, football operations, they all have higher level as access than, let's say, ticket sales or reception. So there is some hierarchy there, but the idea was to create a station that anyone could go in, search for things, which was not a possibility before. Our digital media manager who ran our website had to, like Pete said, find games that a player did well on, or remember, we got a good shot of X player during X game. This is a better solution. You're able to search just by, like Google Images would be, but for our library, specific to our imagery and players, along with corporate partners found a great use for it as well. And now, Pete and I basically sit together every Wednesday, which is when our deadline is for our freelancers to upload, and we get together. Everything is uploaded into a neat little folder, and we basically just sort out from there. Instead of taking on hard drives and CD disks and different links from different web sharing sites, we're able to just upload it all to one database where we don't have to download anything to our desktop and re-upload. We're now just able to drag, drop it into the right folder, and it shows up across the entire organization. So that saves a ton of time, and that saving time, saving money in a sense, and it frees us up to be a little bit more creative and focus on other duties and day-to-day tasks. And one of the big ones, especially right now with everyone working from home, is offsite access. Previously, you were able to VPN in and get to our server, but it just wasn't ideal. Now it's just as simple as going to our URL, whether you're at home, whether you're at the stadium, it doesn't matter, and just grab whatever you need without having to ask us questions. If they have further questions, they're allowed to, obviously, but the idea is for everything to be self-serviced, and that's saved us a ton of times, and our inboxes have definitely cleaned up over the past year just within the first year deployment on this. And then this is kind of where it's going to get a little nerdy, so bear with me for a second, but the basic KPIs that we really want to hit were these ones. This is the ones I usually present to leadership and say, the system's working. We're doing around 10,000 downloads a month during the season. If the NFL's watching, I know you guys do a lot more than that, but this is pretty big for an internal organization of just using our stakeholders along with our accounts registered. That's the big one of, we have a pretty big staff across the stadium and our office itself. And to have 201 people have logged in and made an account and use it in some form or fashion, that's huge. Along with that, we have external users like the Miami Open. They have separate accounts because there's a separate organization, along with contractors and different corporate partner stakeholders. So they're able to, log into the system like we would, but they have different levels of access. And along with that, we have, 111,000 unique assets. So these are all just individual images. They each have individual metadata that is searchable. We pretty much tend to not put anything on the system that we can't search for because, well, that defeats the whole purpose of the system itself. We want to keep it tidy. We want to keep it clean. This is where it gets really, really nerdy, but the big one is page views. We're doing 500,000 page views in a 6-month period. And to note, this is just November to May. So if you know anything about the football season, that's from usually, July, August to December. We didn't enable Google Analytics, which I highly suggest everyone does, until November. And you can see over here on the left, the peaks are definitely larger in December than they are in May, just based on how the season works. But if you have access to analytic databases for your main, MiamiDolphins.com, it may not seem like a lot, but when you put it in context of, A, this is a first-year rollout of the system, B, this is an internal website for staff and stakeholders, that really puts into context of just how impactful this use is for us, because these are all things that we don't have to do on an email basis. These are all things that we don't get asked for. Now we are gathering buy-in from users going in and finding things on their own. And this is where we're kind of going to go through the walkthrough. We have a couple examples to initially go through and say, here's a couple examples of this and that, and we'll show you that here. We obviously have the portal side, so this is what the end user sees. So this is what our normal employees see. This is just a test account. And then here's the admin backend, which we'll kind of dip back and forth into. And one of the first examples I want to show is, Pete can really talk about this, but our events. Everyone sees that 8 to 14 member team and goes, whoa, why do you need that many people? And to kind of show you, I mean, this is our event library for October. And Pete, you want to talk about the 15th?
Yeah. Yeah, as Hero said, this is our these are some of our events. We have one of the largest teams, or maybe the largest team, around about 14 people total. And the reason we have such a large team is because our organization, they need photography. I think here you brought up the 15th. How many events do we have on that one day? I believe is it 8?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6.
6.
6 right here.
So with 6 events, and some of these, as I'm looking at the names, the cultural tour, that is an event that we take youth from South Florida, and we go to historical landmarks and things around South Florida, and it's a learning experience. But this is an event, this is an all-day event that starts at 9 a.m. and wraps up around 3 p.m. If I'm photographing this event, I'm out of the office, for all those hours, and by the time I get back at 3, I'm probably just starting to pull my highlights, start editing a bit, and send them out for the press release. During those, from 9 to 3, or probably 9 to 4, no one in the organization is getting any photos back from me. They're all waiting to finish their presentation, or they're waiting to finish this pitch or whatnot. So with having a large team, it helps us cover all of these events. And like you said, there's about 6 events on that day. We can only be in one place at a time. So this really helps us help the organization by allowing them to search for events. And as long as we do our job, which is tag it properly, put in the correct metadata and the keywords and things like that, the organization can continue to work, and we can continue to photograph the events and do our job.
Yeah, and we'll get to the fun stuff right here with game days. I'm sure that's what most people are interested in. That's the fun stuff and the thing that you think of. And we'll go in from the front end view here to kind of show you how it's broken down. We obviously have all our game days here. We have it broken down into a pretty unique set that we're still looking at for this year of how we want to actually do it. But to go in here, I mean, this is your general game day. Everything from pregame locker room images all the way down to arrivals to, still arrivals. Players love these images. We love getting them to them. And, locker room warm-ups, pregame warm-ups, suiting up, taking the field, all of it is in here, And all these are searchable and, indexed in a certain manner of, it's pretty much AP style formatting with, player, action, location, date. But along with that, there are other keywords in here that we've put in here, like catch, reception, retro, and we'll explain those in depth in a little bit here. But you can see there's not a lot of other in here, and that's kind of where we get into here. When we pop into any of these home games, this is our assignments folder. This is the reason why we have an 8 to 14 member team. Pete, you want to talk about kind of what the requests look like on any given game day?
Yeah, so you can kind of see we try to title each folder after the request. Some of these requests are things that happen every game. For instance, we have a fans folder right there. If you slow down here, let me see. Yeah, the Hard Rock VIP experience, things like that. We have reoccurring events, and then we have things that are game specific. And again, on a game day, a lot of people are probably, if you're at home, you're waiting till 1 o'clock, you're waiting for kickoff. But for many of us that are working the games.
Will this Pete again?
Oh, Pete.
I hear thunder outside, so that might be the reason why as well. But to go off of that, I mean, we have a variety of requests. Every single one of these is usually a request from someone in the organization that is requesting, hey, can we get images of the 50-50 raffle? Sure. Hey, can we get specific images of bows? And these are all searchable. You can look up Bose and Brian Flores and get that as well. Oh, guess not. Let's see here. Look up Bose. There we go. So you can, find it by player, and these all do have a Bose tag, and they're all wearing Bose headphones here. But to go off of that, I mean, we have tons of requests that go in, and I know some of our photographers are watching, and it's much appreciated of what you guys do. But every request you can think of, from, hey, we're announcing someone on the video board over here, and we want to announce the concert. We need to get it from outside and inside. These are all in the requests themselves. So it's really not just game day. I know that's what everyone likes to talk about, and it's the sexy stuff and it's the fun stuff, but there is a lot more to it than just that. So we do have it organized by crops, as you can see. This is just for our social team to easily pull items from. Let's see here. And then the last thing we really wanted to cover before we jump into Q&A is really our historical section. So this is pretty big. Some teams do it by year, some teams do it by player. We do it by player and some special events like the White House team visit. But these are all sorted by player. And then from there, it's sorted out from headshots to football. You can pop here, and these all have associated metadata with them as well. But we have around 100 or 200 alumni cataloged in here. So it's pretty extensive, and this does take a lot of time to go through and collect this stuff, but it does help our side of the team operations side a lot. And that's the big thing. We just want to make sure that all this content we're capturing and all this content we have archived is being used. Because from a photography standpoint, the worst thing in the world is, when you take a great image and it just doesn't get used. And with that, I think those are the main things we really wanted to cover from a walkthrough perspective. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions on what they'd like to see or process in general we can talk about. But we can open up the questions now, I believe, Kristen, right?
We have a ton of questions already.
Great.
Yoav is going to come back.
We are trying to get Pete in as well. I texted him. So
I just think it's really impressive that you and Pete can finish each other's sentences that way.
We work together a lot.
Pick up right where you left off.
We work together quite a bit. And yeah, there is thunder outside, so that's the big reason why. Sunny South Florida is very sunny right now. Not really.
Perfect. Well, we have a ton of questions, especially about, metadata. So I think you have some fellow damn nerds on the call here. We really want to kind of dig into the nitty-gritty details. Yoav, you want to kick it off?
I do, yeah. Before we dive into metadata, I want to give a shout out comment to, let's see, who was it? Adler, who's glad y'all are keeping their shots. So,
yep, that's one of our photo team members.
Great. So before we dive into that, also there was a question just about kind of what we're looking at here for kind of the uninitiated in terms of like, is this your Libris account? Is this a presentation? Kind of, that there's a little bit of a question around that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the presentation we obviously walk through, and that's, all these slides and all that. But when we are showing off a Libris account, I think the idea was to just get a walk through what the system is. And, that's the back end. So maybe confusing if you've never seen it before. But this is the front end of what I'd say when an employee logs in and they use their Dolphins account, they don't need to do any registering or anything like that. This is kind of what they see. So, I'd say a lot of people do require this. It's just something that HR uses, but it's, when you're speaking at a webinar, you need to update your LinkedIn image. I don't know if anyone's ever done headshots, but it's kind of a pain to answer every single email of, hey, can I get my headshot? Hey, can I get my headshot? Now people are just able to look in, their name and headshot and find it right here. So it is a little bit easier that way. But the idea of this is it's just a self-service portal for photos and imagery. So that's kind of the system if you aren't too familiar with it. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah, I think so. Just in terms of that kind of the portal aspect of that was actually what we were looking at.
This is primarily the front end. So this is what you look at, and then this is what the admin sees. So the structure is a little different on the admin side. This is what the end user sees, and this is the layout that they see it in.
Nice. Okay, so here's a question from Jeff, who misses you fellas. How quickly are you guys getting images back from the other shooters after a game day, and how much time is spent culling through and tagging those on average? And then there was actually another question just about how you actually get the images from the shooter into the Libris account.
Yeah. So basically, everyone on our staff is a contributor that is a freelancer. So they just pretty much use a web portal similar to this. Instead of these buttons, they actually have an upload button right over here. I don't have that account set up at the moment, but it's pretty much drag and drop. It took some getting used to initially because everyone has their own method, but I think hopefully anyone that's watching on our staff especially is used to it at this point. But the idea is they can really just drag and drop, and it goes into one of our folders in here, which is in incoming files. And this is pretty much basic to, I believe, every Libris account, I think. And anytime anyone uploads, it has their initials and it just pops right into here. And then from there, we pretty much just drag and drop. So imagine the guys right here, we would just drag it and drop it into whatever appropriate folder it is. And we also sort it as well. For metadata, we do send them a template, very similar to Parker. Actually, this is a good demonstration here. So the search bar is one of the big things that we push, right? You know, the idea of being able to search yourself instead of having to drill down specifically into every game and finding, you know, a certain image in here that you really like from whatever game you're looking for. In here, the search bar is very helpful. So it's as simple as you start with, you know, Devontae Parker, right? And you have a ton of images of Devontae. He's one of our best receivers on the team. But you can really drill it down, and this is where we'll get into metadata. But let's say you're a designer and you really want a full body shot. Well, here's your full body shots of Devontae Parker. Well, on top of that, I want him isolated, which means easy to cut out, really focused on the player themselves. But I also want him, let's say, running the ball. And this is probably the image that I would use if one of these two. And that's where the metadata structure is really driven. So this is pretty much appropriate to the keywords. If you're looking here, I know it's a lot, but Devontae Parker, and then full body is its own keyword, isolate is its own keyword, and runs. And the keyword structure is over here. Hopefully you can read this on your end, but it's basically the player name, and they run the ball in for a touchdown. And this is all stuff that the freelancers usually add this bit with code replacements that we send them, and then I'll go in and add on top of that just to make sure it's standardized since this was our first year here. And then in here is the additional keywords that are put in on top of the metadata baked into the caption. And this applies not just for action, you know, when we really break it down, when we want a general view, this is a pretty common AP terminology. When you have general view Hard Rock Stadium, you're going to get a ton of general views from interior, exterior, empty, pyro. And if you were specifically looking for pyro, it's obviously right there, so it's chronological, but you can look up just pyro and just get just the pyro images. But to take it a step further, I had a request the other day of what's the easiest way to find, you know, an interior bowl shot with the fans all full with a throwback paint on the field. That's a very, very specific request. And once you learn the system, it's actually pretty simple. You go general view, interior. So that's one step, right? And you'll get general view interiors. So this is every interior shot we have tagged in the systems. On top of that, we want it to be full. So not empty without fans. We want it full with fans. And on top of that, we want the retro. And then just like that, you have the images that you're specifically looking for that play to, you know, whether you're promoting a retro game or whether you're promoting, you know, the stadium itself, and you really just like how the retro treatment looks and the retro paint looks, then that's a way to do it. And that's just all in here, you know, general view, full, interior, retro. As for the metadata structure, this is pretty much what the freelancers get. So this is just an IPTC XML document that they load into Photo Mechanic or their metadata tagging asset of choice. And from there, they basically just fill in this beginning area here with hopefully the right thing. I mean, if it's a player, it's very simple. And we're still kind of developing this language. This is the first year for them, and it was a learning experience for a lot of us. So year two going forward, we're putting in, all right, how much further do we want them to take the captions and the keywords? This was a year one step of, let's put the player name in, let's get that, and then I'll go in and amend to that. As for timeline, I believe is one of the questions. The game ends Sunday night. Some of our photographers are really quick. You know, they get them in that night. That's what I used to do when I used to shoot. Just I couldn't sleep till it was done. But the deadline is usually Wednesday, and that's plenty enough time because we've made that expectation with our staff that, you know, this stuff does take time, especially when collecting from 10 to 14 different photographers. But the general game day stuff, we do a lot of it live. And like I said, live workflow is a whole nother discussion. But what you're seeing right now, this is a game day selects. This is all stuff that's done live during the game. So I'm using the press box with our social media coordinator cropping the stuff live, editing the stuff live, grabbing images from the guys on the field, and then putting the stuff on social, and then also tagging the stuff, usually in-game between drives, or by the time we get back on the plane or taken off. All the stuff is searchable and back on our system for anyone to use around the organization, whether they're away at the game or whether they're home in the pajamas editing at home.
Awesome. Yeah, we did get that question here about your game day workflow, and are you guys using, real-time workflow with FTP and, sending straight into your Libris account from the field? Can you give kind of a quick overview of all that?
Yeah, this is one that's always been evolving, and we tried a couple systems last year throughout different technologies. And if anyone's a team photographer and they know just how different it is from stadium to stadium, that's one of the biggest problems with trying to get images from the field. And we've taken a couple of redundancy methods. So one of them is we have an ingest station down in the field. The other one is we do have an FTP set up through PhotoShelter, and then our own servers as well, as we kind of developed into the year. And they basically just send images via wireless pack or Ethernet cord. And the example I usually give is from flyover, which is a very sensitive, time-sensitive image that you need to get up before the game starts, because, well, if you post a flyover image in the second quarter, it's a bit late. Everyone at home knows, well, the flyover happens before the game, not in the middle of the second quarter. So that's one of those images that you need to get up timely. And our photography team really developed a pretty good knack for knowing when to get this stuff up very quickly. So usually within the flyover happening to ready to post, I'm sitting next to social in our game days, it usually takes about 45 to 60 seconds. So our guys hustle, that's for sure. They run over, they plug in an Ethernet or hotspot, transmit it up. I know I only need one image, so I find the best image, export that one image out in different crops, and then there's a social team that I'm sitting next to in the press box saying it's up, it's ready to go.
Amazing.
Games, it all varies, obviously, but we got it in a pretty good groove. So yeah, 45 seconds to about 2 minutes is usually the longest we usually take on it, but 45 is just about the fastest we've ever done it. And with the average right about being about a minute 15.
Wow.
But I sit in terms of structure, I sit in the press box with our social media coordinators and our designers. So that was one of the biggest things we changed this year. Editors used to be in the photo workroom, and the biggest pain point there was they were so disconnected from A, what was happening in the field with TV delay, but also B, what social needed. So working specifically with our social media coordinator, it's very clear what we need ASAP. When there's a big score, I am talking consistently with our social team and our designer saying, what's the image we need right now? What's the priority? And I can see when our photographer is running to the bench to upload, or going down and chimping right now and uploading right now. And I know which photographer got that angle just from the view that I'm at. I usually talk to our social media coordinator saying, do we need celebration or action? Do we need breaking the plane? Do we need celebration, or do we need bench reaction? And we have this process down where we know exactly what we need. So I'm not trying to cover everything for the sake of covering everything. I know the 2 or 3 images that I need right away, and I can work on everything else extra later. But that's really sped up our workflow of getting images ready to post and posted on social very, very quickly on game days.
Really smart. Nice. What's up next, Yoav?
All right. First off, welcome back, Peter. A lot of people are glad that you're back on. And we also had a great comment from someone who was a photo editor at Super Bowl 54 and used Libris for the first time and said it's awesome. So that was really exciting. Okay, so I'm going to kind of package a few different questions together now, because they're all, I think, within the same realm of things, which is about access. Specifically, I know you talked about kind of anyone with a Dolphins email. So maybe or digging a little more into that, who has access? Is it read only, or can they download them? And then also about how do you get these images to your players as well, and what's their process for accessing the images or Libris?
Yeah, Pete, you want to talk about getting people kind of just set up with the process initially and what that process is like? And I know you've done it over the phone a million times of instructing someone on how to log into PhotoShelter.
Yeah, we like Hiro said before, anyone with a Dolphins email is able to go in and have base access, and it's really more dependent on what the content is. There's a few different factors. So what department are you in? And then what are you going to be using the images for? For instance, our cheerleading department is a great example that they like to have control over what images go out, what images are used, and things like that. inside of PhotoShelter, we're able to change and limit, those accesses so that not everyone can see everything. We're able to pick and choose what we allow people to pull, because you just never know what someone's going to do with it, where it's going to go, who's going to rip it off the internet and do something with it.
So for example of that, like this is our bulk takes, which is the everything. It's
Mhm.
everything that's not edited and we kind of throw in there. We keep just for safety. But after we've sifted out all the really good stuff, we do kind of keep it in a separate permissions group so it doesn't get bogged down in the search.
Right.
And really it's our football communication staff and people that are in football themselves that really require those images, and they can dig through all that stuff if they need. It doesn't need to be, the prettiest shot in the world that's super sharp and beautiful and it's a masterpiece every time. They just need a shot of a certain player, a certain action. And that's been great because our coaching staff actually uses this already, especially now with virtual meetings and virtual off-season programs. They're able to just log in and search for a player name or search for a position group and find images they need.
Right.
And then what was the second part of that question again?
Player communications. How do you share photos with your players?
So basically in here, it's, the player name is in here. And then we also use Socially, which basically syncs up this. The Socially is an NFL initiative. I believe every team does have based on that as well. It syncs up pretty much anything. It's a simple if fan rule. So anything that gets uploaded into our system that contains a player name like this, we'll automatically route it to our social team to say, hey, do you want to send this image to this player? Yes or no. We do have that one little barrier of human interaction saying yes or no, just to avoid duplicates or avoid any unflattering images or anything that's sensitive. So it's a great way of just sending stuff right away without, doing more work. It's killing two birds with one stone in a sense of after a game, I basically upload everything into that selects folder in here. And then our social media coordinator and manager can pretty much just say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, 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 and send it all off to the player right then and there. And it's not importing stuff like this, like these helmet shots. Players don't really need them. They don't really want them. What they want is this stuff, the arrivals, the stuff that they give you on their little runway,
And that's been a huge help because, before this, I'm just getting texts and emails and, direct messages on Instagram, hey, do you have that shot of, me walking up and doing this and that? We have 53 active guys on the roster, so you can imagine 53 of those texts and messages coming through and trying after a game day, after you've already, put in a long day, to go back and then accommodate each of these guys. And obviously we want to, because that only strengthens our relationship with them. And I think it's only fair that we share the images. I mean, they're of them, essentially these guys will be in the league for X amount of years, and you want them to be able to look back on these images and remember it. And, so Socially has been a great way to get out, distribute all those images without Hero and myself and other photographers staying up till 3 a.m. trying to send it out.
I mean, usually by the time it's uploaded on PhotoShelter, it syncs up. So really, from a home game, 20 minutes after a game, when the players are leaving and sitting, cleaning back up, all their images sent to the phone ready from the game because I'm doing that work live, and I'm not needing to double do the work. They're basically walking out the door with images in hand after a game day, and that's been the biggest clutch thing of showing that, hey, you're not just out there, and we're not just out there wasting your time. You give us, certain reactions. You give us your time. We'll make sure that we deliver them just to you as well.
Right.
That's awesome.
Nice. And before we kind of move off of the person-to-person communication, Andy is curious about how you get your 8 to 14 freelancers trained and onboarded and excited about using PhotoShelter.
Pete, you want to talk about how we kind of just dipped in or went all in when we first got the system?
Yeah, I mean, I had kind of told you a little bit before I got cut off with the thunderstorm outside here. I was kind of explaining that, our system just wasn't really working that great. Yeah, I mean, to get them excited about using PhotoShelter, I mean, uploading is so simple. Getting the images to us. I think the biggest thing is probably because it's so organized now, the images are being used more. And I think as a photographer, that's what you want. You want your images used. It's same thing with the players. You want those images, whether, the Miami Dolphins may not post, the third string wide receiver on Instagram walking into the building, but that player, he might. So I think, to get them excited is just, hey, your work is going to be used. And I think that's very important. I mean, I still have a screenshot of the very first image the Dolphins posted of mine. So it's important. And as far as vetting them and getting them into the system and whatnot, because we have so many events, and I've done a lot of these events, countless times over the years, I know which events, put these different photographers in situations, and I kind of use those events to train them up a little bit and to get them thinking about, what we're looking for. A lot of times it's signage, it's showing people having a great time. It's as much context as possible. So I try and throw all of my photographers on these different types of events. One, so they get the experience, and two, so we can see kind of how they treat those events and what they're looking for. Because essentially, we're not trying to hire photographers and bring them onto the team and then tell them how to shoot. Our photographers are on the team because of their style.
Yeah, fully agreed. And it was definitely a learning process. There was an onboarding period where it took some time, and there was a lot of back and forth on emails and learning how to use the system. But I think around like week 8 mid-season or so, I think we pretty much got in a good groove, and we weren't getting as many errors or as many questions. And questions were fine, and we welcomed them all times. But I think by mid-season we were in a really good spot, and that was testament to just kind of saying, all right, let's really just dive in and go all in with this instead of kind of slowly in developing the system. We really just went, all right, here's the system, here's how it's going to work. We're going to do our best. We're still learning on our end, and the photographies that are on our system, that are on our team, still learning as well. But I think we made a lot of progress in year 1, and year 2 we're obviously looking to just improve that even more.
Nice. This is a question from John Willie for Pete. Are you playing Hoobastank in your headphones right now?
That's actually why I got cut off. The music was so loud, it interfered with my connection.
But on a more, that's maybe one of the greatest questions we've ever gotten. So another question, just to fast follow. You mentioned a shift from strictly capturing game action to storytelling. Was that something you guys had to sell to the organization to get buy-in, or did it happen more organically?
Pete?
I mean, it's all about the access, right? I think it's being responsible with your access. Being responsible, not, overstepping. I think it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of both. As I mentioned before, when Tom Garfinkel came to the organization, there was a much bigger need for photography. And John, who just asked that great question, he really dove in, and I followed suit, and we tried to really show what we could do with this access. And after, with socially and getting to distribute those images, you're able to show the guys what you're doing, so close to them, why you're taking photos of them doing this and that. So I think part of it is getting that access, and it is talking with, maybe a great example is this, that we hired Brian Flores as our head coach early last year. Before he even touched down in South Florida, I was on the tarmac with our video crew and our social media team and other Dolphin staff. As soon as he stepped out of the plane with his family, we covered him the entire day, his first day at the facility. And we went into the team meeting room, myself, Carlos, Hero, Surf, Ariel, the entire video team and social media, and we all met him, shook his hand, told him, our names, told him what we did. And we just talked to him for a little while and let him understand what we're here to do, letting him know that we're not putting out every image we take. If someone looks bad, all photographers know, if you take a photo of a person and they don't look good, you're not going to post it because it doesn't look good on you. But you have to build that trust still. There's a lot of times we see things that the public doesn't, so there has to be that trust factor there. But I would say using your access wisely and then showing the work and showing why you were in the locker room, for an hour, or why you did that portrait session with a player or something. I think you have to show them that work so they really understand what you're doing.
Awesome.
Love that. Love that. Okay, so somewhat maybe related, but this is maybe a question or definitely a question for both of you. What are some of the biggest year one growing pains that you would suggest for a new Libris or PhotoShelter photography crew? And what did you learn that you would apply for year two? And then a little more generally, where do you see this going in the future?
Pete, you want to start with like from a photographer standpoint of just what it was like to I mean, we got out of a room and that was the first thing.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing was me and Hero and Carlos deciding that we were going to go, full blown with PhotoShelter and Libris. We knew that we could either, stick our toe in and, mess with it a little bit, or we could just, get the issues out of the way first year. Some of the issues were probably uploading. Something that we ask our photographers to do is when they cover events, they're going to be uploading a selects folder, a 16:9, and a 1:1 folder. Those are all different sizes for the different social media platforms. So, uploading those was kind of an issue. I don't know. I don't really know if we experienced too many. I think a lot of it was metadata, getting the proper metadata and the categories filled out properly. I don't know if we
worked
really
around that. Like we made these. I don't know if you want to talk about the XX platform and how we did that.
Yeah. So XX is something that we have our photographers. We have a in Photo Mechanic, we have the IPTC stationary pad, which we send out an XMP file to all of our photographers either before or right after the game, so that everyone's is the exact same. And then you'll see there XX during an NFL game. So we have them put the XX so that if they don't know the player with the helmet off and they don't know who it is, they don't improperly tag it. They just put XX. And then Hero or myself or Carlos will then search for XX and we'll go back in. We see these guys, we're there every single day at training camp. We take their headshots. We do it all. So I mean,
we memorize which helmet they're wearing. We know which armband is on which arm. Like
you remember who has that tattoo on their forearm or what, whose hair is that or whatever. As far as issues, I don't think we really ran into too many directly with PhotoShelter. I think if anything, looking forward, it would just be a smoother upload process, I guess, for us, which again is just photographer to photographer issues. Hey, I exported it incorrectly or something, but I don't remember really experiencing too many issues with the system.
No, I think it's just showing that we're working hard on it as well, and that's kind of how I approached when I told the photo team, like, hey, like here's a system that works. Here's a system that I came from with the NFL and also with the Rams. Like this is pretty much a league-wide system at this point. I don't know exactly how many teams use it, but it's more than a majority. And once I had that across and said, I'll be there in the dirt with you guys captioning till 2 a.m. Like Pete and Carlos are the ones on the field in 20-degree Buffalo weather. I'm sitting in the press box cozy. So I tell them, like, I'll handle everything else. Like I'll make your job as easy as I can. I can't go out there and carry a blanket for you and put it around your shoulders. But what I can do is I can stay up on the plane after you guys are exhausted and wiped. I can stay up captioning, making sure that everything's right, making sure that everything's being uploaded. So you guys can just shoot, focus on your jobs, and make sure that you're not worrying about anything else. So I try to alleviate that as much as I could and show them, like, I'm here as a resource and this system works from my perspective, but I also want to make sure that I'm getting buy-in from you guys, not just saying, here's a system, use it. I'm saying, here's a system, we're going to use it together. And that was a big process where I didn't want to come in and just be like, hey, here's a new system, we're using it, and too bad if you don't like it. And that was a process where I've been available for hour-long calls with our freelancers. I've been available for 2-hour calls with Pete and Carlos, and that's the big thing, and just constant communication of like telling your guys it's okay, like especially the first couple of weeks, it's okay if you mess up, just ask us if you have questions and we'll help the best we can.
That's great.
Awesome. I know we're running out of time here, and I'm just going to flip it back to Kristen for a quick second, but Kelly wanted to ask Peter, Peter, does your favorite boss of all time live in Florida, Wisconsin, or Texas? Asking for a friend. So you definitely have a lot of fans on this call.
Oh, wow. The question was, who's my favorite boss? Is that what it was?
I think just where they live or
Where they live.
You don't have to answer.
Oh, I think that's my internet cutting out again.
Awesome. Well, you guys have been amazing sports, and I cannot say thank you enough for sharing, your insights and giving us this amazing behind the scenes look. I hope all of you guys will join us. Thank you for your amazing questions today. I hope you'll join us for the PhotoShelter Summit for Brands on June 25th. If you have more questions for this team, I know we had a handful that we couldn't get to. We'll try to answer them on the blog or on June 25th, so be sure to join us then. Here is the link one more time to register for the summit, and we'll see you all next time. Guys, thank you so much. That was an amazing conversation, and thanks to all of you all for your amazing questions. We just couldn't have asked for a more engaged audience and 2 more amazing presenters. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Great. Well, we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.